So I know in our last item collection, we said that those new items were the most versatile that we'd seen yet. Well, this week we have a bunch more versatile items and they knock the previous ones out of the park. These are single-handedly the most versatile items in the game. And as an added bonus, they're for Stelle. Supposedly the hardest character in the game to play, at least currently. The first is the Angle Grinder Drone, and if you thought that was a lot, now I have to tell you what it is. It is a small drone tool vehicle weapon. That's 4 different archetypes. That's the most archetypes I've seen on a single item so far. Every 7.8 seconds, so this is probably, I think, while these screenshots were taken, there was a little bit of speed being applied. So that should actually be 8 seconds, so every 8 seconds, deal 5 damage per tool that you own. This, of course, is a tool, so at least doing 5 damage. At just 2 gold, that's pretty low. Interesting little note, I guess, to add on to this one. In this exact build where this screenshot was taken from, they must have had 2 tools and 1 strength, or 1 extra damage, because this is dealing 11 damage. So it'll be doing 5 damage for itself, 5 damage for another tool, plus 1 from something like strength. This has 4 archetypes. It will fit in with almost anything, and this has the added benefit of being small. The Angle Grinder Drone will be one of those items that you just see sneaking in to a lot of different builds, just like the flash grenades, for example, from Vanessa currently. That fits into a lot of builds just because it is a good small item. This is a very, very flexible small item. So you'll be able to add it into whichever little thing you need. There are a bunch of vehicle builds we've seen, there are some drone builds we've seen, and now this is also has tool synergy. 5 damage per tool you own. So this is likely, because you're probably going to be building this into some sort of synergy, going to be worth at least 10 damage, so at least just over 1 damage per second. You're probably going to get a lot more out of this than it suggests. But it's going to be a slow starter, right? It's 2 gold, so this could literally be the first item you bought from the actual shops. And at that point, it's only dealing 5 damage every 8 seconds, which early game is okay-ish, but it's nothing to write home about. It's not even as much joy as the alien burrito that we saw at the beginning. Early game, this is going to be a slow burner. You're going to need other items to activate this, but I think it's worth the payoff. Will you pick it up later on? Probably not. There are probably more specific things you can get once you're into that archetype. But this is a very, very handy tool to have when you're in that flexible pivoting stage of your build, trying to decide, okay, I've got a couple of good tools, I've got a couple of good drones, maybe I go into this one, maybe I go into that one, I don't know what I'm going to do yet. You see Angle Grinder Drone, you pick it up, it works with everything on your board, and then maybe you end up finding the perfect vehicle, and you're like, well, I'm glad I have the Angle Grinder Drone, because now I can sell my tools and my drones, and just pick up that vehicle and run with it. So really, really good flexible item. A lot of these items we've been seeing today have been incredibly flexible. So it's looking good for those people, that sort of middle game area, and people that might struggle with that. Next up, we have yet another item that's probably good for people that struggle with finding the right item, let's say. And that is the Atlas. Not every any seconds. The Atlas doesn't have an active ability. This medium item just has a passive. You see an extra choice each round, and it also gives you plus 30 maximum health for 5 gold. So it's a early to middle game item being priced in at 5 gold, and you get a relatively useful passive. I see these sorts of items in a lot of auto battlers. Basically, we're going to reduce the RNG slightly. We're going to give you one more choice of things. You know, instead of going to a merchant and seeing 4 choices, you're going to get 5. Instead of going to the hero power person or hero skill person, instead of showing you 3, we'll show you 4. Or if it's 4, 5, etc. So Atlas can definitely have some uses, but only if you're going for something very specific. I can see Atlas being useful if you are digging for a specific build and trying to get like a very particular shiny or fancy item, right? if you really, really need the fancy angle grinder that, I don't know, doubles the damage of a tool to its left. I don't know what these things do. That's a complete wild guess. And it's probably way too strong because double is a big word. But if you specifically need that, then Atlas can be useful if you have the space for it, right? It's going to give you maximum health. So while you're not at full build, it's going to allow you to take some more hits. And it's going to make it more likely that you will actually find that thing. Now, we haven't seen the game in a little while, but the last time we did see it, there was a re-rolling mechanic right before the end of the day. In my opinion, Atlas comes into this in two different ways. Number one, if you're rolling for new items, if Atlas gives you a new option every time, then Atlas is definitely good in a build where you're specifically going for something. Like it's Atlas is almost vital at that point. If you see it, buy it. However, if Atlas doesn't work in that scenario, or if you don't have the gold to push reroll, or if that reroll mechanic is gone, then Atlas might become a little bit more edge case. I would be very interested, however, to see what the shiny and fancy versions of Atlas are. Shiny is almost definitely just going to increase the maximum health. That's fine. But if the fancies do something interesting, the fancies could... Do we have 2 extra choices? Do we get to specify something? I don't know. The world is their oyster because they haven't told us yet. But the fancy versions of Atlas would be very, very interesting to me to see what they do with this mechanic. Last but not least, we have the Ornithopter. We've seen this art, or we saw this art quite a while ago. Beautiful, beautiful art. This small vehicle, one of the items with the fewest archetypes we've seen today, obviously with the exception of Atlas. This small vehicle, every 6.8 seconds, so 7 seconds because they had speed when they recorded this, gives you 2 altitude. And as a passive, it has 10 armor. This 2 gold item, really early pickup, it gives you altitude. This is going to unlock a lot of builds early on. This might be one of the best options to pick up for early altitude gain. It gives you 10 armor, which is going to protect you against a lot of different things. Not only a lot of different things, but armor triggers every single fight. So if you're going into a bunch of early battles, armor is going to pay for itself because you're going to be taking that 10 damage for free every battle you have. So when you go into the final battle at the end of the day, your health hasn't been hit as bad. So armor early on, and 2 gold as well. 2 gold for 10 armor is pretty damn potent. That could be very, very handy. And then again, like I say, this is 2 altitude. This is unlocking a bunch of different builds that require you to take off. And then if we can get something that gives us minus altitude, land. Or if we just need to get to maximum altitude, we need to get as much altitude as possible. You can add other things to Ornithopter to keep increasing altitude. It is another vehicle as well, and it's a small item, so it can fit into those tiny little gaps that you have. All round, I think, for a small 2 gold item, gaining 2 altitude, this is perfect for a takeoff build. So if you think that a stout altitude build might be yours, and maybe the Ornithopter would fit in, then you want to check out this other build for Stelle. This is part of a bizarre build out of context challenge that we do here on the channel. Don't forget to join us down below before you hop on over to that video. But it's all about Stelle and altitude and how to get the most out of it with a very interesting item, Red Lantern.